Welcome to the Functional Health Coaching Show, where we are here to support and answer your questions so that you can help people on a deeper level get real results and grow your health coaching business. Do you have questions you want to ask live on the show? You can call in every Friday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 1-347-637-1378. Are you looking to increase your credibility and grow your health coaching business using functional lab testing and data-driven protocols so that you can confidently solve health issues? Well, we have the course for you. Go to fdn.today/show to learn more and sign up today. Okay, let's join today's episode.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in and spending part of your Friday with us, or whatever day you're listening to this, because this is a live call, but it's also recorded, so you might be hitting recording sometime in the future. So we're speaking from the past here. But you've tuned into the FDN Fantastic Friday Call, otherwise known as the Functional Health Coaching Show, where we talk about all things pertaining to functional diagnostic nutrition and functional health coaching and the amazing system and methodology and process that we get to go through to help people regain function, which when you regain function, everything else in life gets better. So happy to be with you guys. It is July 24th, 2020, middle of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, I believe. So I always have to say that because we have graduates and FDN practitioners from all across the world in different hemispheres, and I think I'm saying that right. We actually got a graduate from Australia today, which we'll read off here in just a second here. So I have to cover all my bases when I say hello to people, different time zones where you're at. And it doesn't matter where you're at in the FDN course, or if you're already graduated, being graduated for 5 years, or you're even just considering taking the FDN course and wondering what FDN is about, and if this is the right timing for you, if this is the right course for you. We hope that this call gives you a taste of that. Every week we come together, me, Brandon Mollet, and buddy here, Ryan Monahan. We have a few years' experience between us doing FDN and working with folks, and we hope to answer your questions, help support you. Again, if you're as a trainee or a graduate on some cases, or if you're just listening in, happen to find this, I guess, podcast, I guess we'll call it, radio show, whatever you want to call it, and you're just wondering about what FDN is about. So you can call in as well. So we'd love to hear from anybody. Just keep it PG. We'll be okay. Number for that, if you want to call in and talk to us, is 347-637-1378. Again, 347-637-1378. That'll get you on, and we'll see you pop up there. Hit 1 on your keypad, and I'll see you there, and I'll call out your area code, most likely, and get your name, and you can ask a question or two, make a comment, add to the conversation. Just say hello, whatever you want to do. We're happy to hear from you guys. We love it when we get live callers. But we have got some questions that have been written in that we're going to answer today as well. So that's the format of this show. We've been doing this for, I'm going to say, probably 11, 12 years at this point. So a pretty long-running show, and we like this tradition we have within FDN that was started years ago by our founder, Reed Davis. All right. Well, again, Brandon Mollet, I'm your host here today, and my co-host is Ryan Monahan. I'll say hi to Ryan real quick, make sure he's on with me. Ryan, are you there?
I am. How you doing, Brandon? Happy Friday.
Yes, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Glad to have you back. I know you had a little travel last week, so good to be on with you here, and we can answer some questions. Doesn't put all the burden on me, because you always have the better answer, so I can just say, hey, Ryan, take that answer, take that question.
I like to think we complement each other's strengths.
That works. I'll take that. It's good to be with you. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go through. We'll circle back around to questions here in a second, but a few announcements, a few details on some things let you guys know about before we jump into the questions for today. But we do have a health coach certification summit coming up. We did this last year. If you guys were aware of that, we did that last year. But it is August 8th through the 15th this year, and it's a health coach certification summit. Help you find the right certification, which can up-level your career and your business. So it's a free summit. You got the information there. So Reed's interviewed and talked to about, it's a lot of experts. I'm trying to look at the number here. A lot of experts on more than 20 different alternative health programs to find the best choice for your practice. So we're going to talk about integrative and functional medicine, environmental health, nutrition, mind-body approach, and a whole lot more. So we sent the information out on that. You guys probably see it there in your email, but that's coming up. So register for that. A lot of good folks on that call. A lot of names that you'll recognize, and kind of our peeps, people that see things eye to eye with us, and we've got to band together. So that's really cool. So the Health Coach Certification Summit, 8th of August to the 15th. So make sure you tune in for that. Reed's a really good interviewer and always is entertaining. So check that out. Make sure you're aware of that. Ryan, any details on that that you know that I'm missing? I should stop and ask you if you know much more about that than I do there.
About the
summit there. Mm-hmm.
Online
Health Coaching Summit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually haven't dug in into the details, so you might know more than I would about that.
Gotcha. Just checking to know if AFDNP was connected at all with that, or maybe you got interviewed. Who knows? So, but it'll be good. So you guys tune in for that. And then also, we always mention each week about the FDN conference, otherwise known as the Functional Health Coaching Conference. So, because we want to open it to anybody and everybody. You don't have to be an FDN practitioner to attend, that's for sure. And this conference is one of a kind, right? So we bring together health coaches, aspiring health coaches, health professionals, and the goal is to advance your education and grow your business and connect, right? That's one of the best things that we can do there is come together and connect. So it is October 23rd to the 25th this year in San Diego at the Hard Rock Hotel. And pretty cool place. We were there last year. And people are asking, okay, what's going on with everything going on in the world? Is it still on? Are we still moving forward? Well, we've said every week, yes, everything is moving forward, but a few more details are out there about it. You probably got an email about it. You probably saw, I think Jen did an awesome video kind of giving you guys some insight into that. But we are full steam ahead for an in-person and also via live stream for the 2020 conference. So it's moving forward. We've got an awesome lineup of speakers, and if you want to attend in person, you feel safe doing so, we're still planning on having that conference. The conference venue there doing a great job to keep a really safe environment. There's some details on that. They're doing an amazing job of following all the regulations there to make sure people are safe. And so we're going to keep monitoring things. So if there's something that shifts and changes, we're going to do everything we can to, make you feel safe, at least. So whatever your opinion of all of this stuff going on is, we're going to abide by these rules here to make sure that everybody is safe and has a good time. So if you purchase a ticket and restrictions prohibit you from attending in person, or your options here, you can swap your ticket for the live stream, or you can just go ahead and transfer it onto the 2021 conference there. So you have some options. And that's scheduled for September 2021, so a little bit earlier there in the year. We'll have that in 2021. So, again, if you can't make it, you bought your ticket, you cannot make it in person, don't feel comfortable doing that, you can just transfer that over to the live stream or move it into the conference for next year in September 2021. And we do have some 3-month payment plans for tickets. So I don't know if we've offered that before. This could be a new thing there. So if that makes it more affordable for you to attend, you've got that as an option. So, and like usual, we'll keep you abreast of changes and things going on. We try to do those updates on a real regular basis, but everything moving forward, straight full steam ahead. We just reconfirm tickets for ourselves, for flight tickets to head out and go that way. And I think we're going to actually, wife and I might spend an extra day there, depending on how all these flights are shifting a little bit right now. So we're going to maximize our time out there with you guys and stay as long as we can and get away and learn and connect. And it's one of the highlights of the year for sure, not only professionally, but I guess on the social side. So these are, who knows me better than a bunch of FDN practitioners. You hear me talk every week on this call at least, and then on some Facebook Lives and things that we do. But on a deep level, as far as our call, our mission, our goal in life, what we're spending our time doing every single day and love to do. We get each other on some amazingly deep level, and that's really felt when you're at a conference like this. Everything is just comes together, and it's just an amazing feeling. There's an energy and there's an energy. That's probably the best thing. An energy that just is very tangible that whole weekend. With every interaction, every single time you're sitting down doing stuff, everything is just it's a high energy time, really, I would say, for me anyhow. So if it was a week long, I don't know if I could stand it. So in some ways, I'm glad it's 3 days and it's shorter because it's a lot, but awesome stuff. So that's your conference update, guys. So FDNconference.com. Go take a look at the details so you know what's going on. We've been super transparent on what our plans were for that, and also just with the course. This is our job, right? Nothing to hide. We tell you what we're doing, what the plans are, and as things shift and change, we want to make sure you guys know that, and hope you can attend and feel safe and do it. So Reed said we're looking for that window. Everybody can come, enjoy themselves, get back home safely. That's the plan. All right. Well, good stuff. So I think that was the big announcements. Want to make sure everybody knew about. So hopefully you guys are still with us here. We've got about 15 minutes here in the show, so we'll get to questions here in just a minute and see a lot of you guys lining up there on the switchboard. So great. Thanks for tuning in live, guys, today. So graduates. So I want to jump on here and congratulate some awesome folks. I like to do this every week and read your name on air. So if you graduate the course the week before actually all the way up to, I guess, Thursday evening, maybe even Friday morning. I don't know. Maybe we could do that. So I think it's Thursday is the cutoff. If you graduate then you'll be acknowledged and cheered on and congratulated on air on the Friday call. And then if you do it on a Friday morning for some reason, then it'll be on next week. But we always like to say congratulations to our graduates this week, and we always have them. There's very few weeks we go by. I don't know if I can remember really a time we had 0 graduates a week. So always people are moving through the course, and as soon as you graduate, you are out there within a day. You are doing the work. So some people cannot wait, and they wanted to do the work the week after they started the course. Other people are like, oh, really? That quickly? And there's a little bit of that apprehension and excitement that comes with that, too. So regardless of your response, that's the thing. You are certified. You're ready to go out there and help people and have a whole lot of fun. So 3 graduates this week, and we are spread all across the globe here. And Shannon Plummer has been helping me out with the verbal finals, so I don't get to talk to every single person now, but that's because we want to move you guys forward as quickly as we can. And one name here that I didn't get to talk to, and that would have been fun, but it's always good, but our very own Christina Ryan from Spring, Texas has graduated. So Christina runs the medical director program. So if you are doing labs, running labs, you're getting reports back, those emails come from Christina. So she's awesome. Got to meet her for the first time at the FDN conference last year, and she's just a joy to work with and has just done a tremendous job moving a lot of test results through. Our numbers are amazingly high right now. People are out there running labs. You guys are staying busy, myself included, I know Ryan included, which is an awesome thing. Christina keeps all that up. So I acknowledge her 2 different ways, being an amazing director, I think is her official title. Forgive me, Christina, if that's not it, but running the medical director program, make sure things run smoothly, and then making it through the FDN course and becoming certified. So, Christina, awesome job. Congratulations. And then we'll jump north. We'll go to Sherry Jemmett from British Columbia in Canada. And then we'll go way the other direction and congratulate Dave O'Brien in Australia. So we're all over the place here today, guys, all over the world, which is tremendous. So, guys, congratulations. Great job. Happy to have you be part of the family here. How about that, Ryan?
Congrats, everyone who just graduated. Super cool. And thank you for all the updates, too, on the conference. I'm excited to be there, lest there be an act of God. I'll be there with my mask on and my hand sanitizer and, whatever it takes to be there in person.
It's all right. It's worth it. So we'll have to connect. We always spend a lot of time together at the conference, so I'm looking forward to that face-to-face.
Super fun, yep, and tons of opportunities to socialize and connect with your fellow FDNs. And I always leave with just a renewed sense of purpose and mission, and being willing to go out there and change some lives and work the FDN process. And if you are struggling with a sense of imposter syndrome, then the FDN conference is the antidote to that. Because I truly believe that just in being together with like-minded peers, it really does give you a sense that you're doing good work, and that we do have the tools to be able to help people. True.
There's a time for humility and to be aware, but I think that's always got to have some wisdom with that too. So, stay in your lane and do what's right, and don't be a braggart, but at the same time realize the power of what you can accomplish and what you can do with people. So, a lot of humble folks, I would say, within our community.
Absolutely. And pretty cool that you have some options there with the conference ticket and being able to do a virtual option, or even potentially use that as a voucher for next year's conference. So lots of flexibility there. So definitely get your ticket, because, either way, you'll be able to participate. It's pretty neat. I know Jen was saying too, they might try to make try to make light of the situation and have a mask contest. So that could be fun.
Right.
Whoever comes with the most creative mask will win some kind of prize potentially.
That's cool. We've got to do some of that, right? So, the work we do and things we do are serious, but also there's some humor in life, and there's some lightheartedness, and there's thinking about the positive and trying to make the best out of situations, and that's one way we can do that. I love it.
Very cool.
Well, good deal. Okay. All right, well, about 45 minutes left in the call, so we're going to take some questions. So if you guys want to jump on the line there and hit 1 on your keypad, number to dial in is 347-637-1378. Again, 1 on the keypad, and that will bring you on, and I'll acknowledge you, and we'll talk a little bit. So you guys are welcome to jump on now. Otherwise, I'm going to grab a written-in question, because we get lots of those, so people write in directly, or we get posts on Facebook, on the training page here mostly. So let's see here. I don't... All right. Here's one here. I think I'm looking to see if I had crossed off one here from last week. I'll have to look and see. This is a good question. I don't want to repeat questions, but it was a really good one. I like some of these. So, okay, here's one question on melatonin. So, person says, we don't really have an FDN range for melatonin, just that it should be, with the whole BioHealth test, greater than 18. So, regardless, so if we think about the access panel there, we'll just say that we want to be within range. Read shows a woman whose melatonin is 39.7, and Reed says it's too high. So maybe I missed something according to the greater than 18 guideline, but how can we say it is too high? So with the BioHealth 205, I'm sorry I picked this question, guys, because it's talking about the BioHealth 205, but we do have the same melatonin marker there on the access panel. Maybe, Ryan, if you can give me that range there for the access panel, if you've got a test result there handy. So with the old BioHealth range, we had a range 18. So with melatonin, because it's such a good reflection of gut function, and of course we have the sleep component side of that, the circadian rhythm side of that, less than 18 really is what gives you the most information, or let's just say, in general terms, melatonin out of range on the low side there. That's going to give you the most information. So when you have that going on, that's when you've got more to work with, right? So you're going to think about improving gut function. You're going to think about clinical correlation to gut issues. You're going to think about sleep and circadian rhythm and quality of sleep and how the person falls asleep or how they stay asleep, how restful that they are. It's a good indication of all of these things. So it's a very powerful marker, especially when it is low, when it's out of range. So within range, if you're within the range there, then it could or could not be a clue, kind of depending on several different things. So if a person has poor sleep, but their melatonin is within a good range, you'll see that sometimes, right? So we know that at least it's not really a shortage of melatonin that's the problem with their sleep. It's one of multiple other things you want to be thinking about that can affect sleep. And generally, working with an FDN practitioner, sleep will improve. That's just kind of comes with territory, right? So it is the second R or second letter in dress. The R is rest, and we really focus on that, the sleep hygiene part, but also the hidden stressors that do affect sleep and your good night's rest. So in the middle range there, it's sometimes a little more interpretation involved. So point being, if that person's not sleeping very well and their melatonin's within range, they could still have a gut issue. It doesn't rule that out. They could have a endocrine imbalance issue. They could have a thyroid issue. They could have hormonal issue. They could have mineral deficiencies. They could have a gut bug. They could have diet and lifestyle things that are affecting food sensitivities, all sorts of things, liver congestion, all of these things that we think about with an FDN. They can have all these things going on. You just probably aren't going to recommend melatonin as a potential supplement because what we can tell, we've got enough, right? So on the too high side, you get a little less information from that. So it's more of sometimes a no clue. For me, there are some reasons why melatonin can be high. If it's really, really high, then you're looking at possible exogenous hormone, right? So if they didn't read the instructions, you didn't cover it with them, and they took melatonin the night before they took the test, or a couple of days before they took the test, it can still be in the system there, and you'll see a melatonin that's sky high, that's maybe in the hundreds or the thousands. It's like, okay, well, that's probably exogenous hormone, because melatonin is a hormone after all. So it could be exogenous, right? And also, just like any other hormone, there's a level of detoxification that goes along with that. So sometimes if you see high melatonin, it could be a detoxification question there. So, and then that's when you want to look at everything else and say, okay, how's the liver looking? How's the gut looking overall? So I'm pulling up a little list I've got, guys, here of possible reasons for high melatonin.
While you're looking,
a few odd ones there,
Brandon.
Yeah. What you got there?
Yeah, I know a few offhand. One you mentioned, when you see high melatonin, the first thing, of course, like you alluded to, is I would be checking to see if they're supplementing with it, or even potentially any precursors. So 5-HTP, for example, feeds into the serotonin pathway, and then we actually make our melatonin from serotonin. So if you're taking 5-HTP or tryptophan, either of those could be precursors that could feed into melatonin pathways. Also, excessive caffeine consumption can raise melatonin, so that's something to look for. And if you're ruling those two things out, if you're seeing something on the very high end, like in the hundreds or 1,000 even, that could be a sign of some serious neuroinflammation, some brain inflammation going on, and that could potentially be, more indicative of something more serious, like, heavy metals or Lyme or mold. Of course, you'd have to do some more digging and correlation with your client, and don't always assume the worst or go looking for problems where there aren't problems. Rule out the simple stuff first. That's my general philosophy. It's just like when you have a computer problem, and usually restarting it will fix the issue before you look at all the complicated stuff, right? And by the way, I did happen to dig up a version of the new stress and hormone panel from Access Labs, and for reference, the melatonin range there is 20 to 60 picograms per milliliter. So that's 20 to 60 pg/ml. And I know in the recent call we had with Access Labs for the mentors and the clinical advisors that the medical director there over at Access Labs had said that the optimal ranges for all these hormones would be in the upper 25% of that range as optimal. So if you're looking at 20 to 60 for melatonin on the new Access Stress and Hormones panel, I would think you'd want to see it, maybe above 40, 45. somewhere in that range, 40 to 60 would probably be more optimal.
I agree. Very good point on that. That's something you can take and apply to this whole entire lab, because people are asking, hey, what about FDN optimums? And that idea, the 18 to 35 on the old BioHealth there, those are the FDN optimum range. So above 35, that was considered high on that test. So when it comes to access here, when you say what are the FDN optimums, then just look at the top 25% of each one of those ranges that are there. And that's going to be that's what we're going to be basing our FDN quote optimums on at this juncture, and forever. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
And of course, the reference ranges will be slightly different from the access panel to the BioHealth panel, because they're using different units and also different testing methodology. So it's not going to be an exact apples to apples comparison. But if you're using the upper 25% of those ranges, at least, so far, until we run hundreds of these and get some more real-world feedback, that's what we're looking at for the optimal ranges.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one thing about that, I'll say, this gives you guys an opportunity to think about things in a nice general way also. So, when you're learning labs and how to interpret labs, you're going to be down in the weeds often, right? So you're going to be looking at, okay, this hormone should be within this range. This hormone's within this range. And you're very, very detailed on what you're looking at. So as you progress in your ability to interpret labs, you're going to be less in the weeds and more looking at the bird's eye view. The 30,000-foot view is really maybe the better view in some ways. So when you initially look at a lab, I'm going to look at the numbers and the ranges and get really down in that in a second. And then very quickly, probably within seconds, I'm back to the big bird's eye view. So if you are given a quality hormone panel or test and the ranges are there, you don't necessarily have to have FDN optimum ranges to be able to give an interpretation of that. What I mean by that, you can just look and say, okay, is there DHEA high or low? Is the estrogen high or low? Is the testosterone high or low? Precisely what the number is, it's not going to match up with every lab. I'm just going to look at that and say, okay, well, I'm seeing low DHEA, low estrogen, low testosterone, low progesterone. Okay, this person's sort of in a depleted state. I know that. Or if I'm seeing some really high estrogen and low progesterone, according to whatever range you've got there, okay, that's estrogen dominance that's going on. We want estrogen to be better utilized and detoxed and metabolized, and we also want progesterone to come up. So it's looking at more of this 30,000-foot view for whatever the theme is you're seeing on that particular lab. So while you are going to be very detailed and in the weeds with this, but you got to zoom back out too and look at the big picture. And then you have those two things going. And then the third component is going to be, who is this person? So that has a big influence in what you're doing. So if you can master all three of those things, and sometimes, Ryan, probably for you too, all three of those are going on at the exact same time when you're looking at a lab. And so those three things you come together, that's what's going to give you a really good feel for what's going on, guide your protocols, and end up with really good results. So don't get too stuck on these ranges necessarily. As far as, I've got to be within these 3 points here. Look at a little bit more on the broad side too, the theme that you're seeing on these labs.
I could not agree with you more, and that's why we teach in the course that we don't treat the test paper. We're addressing the health of the individual that we're working with, and the labs just provide us clues, but the labs are not what gets the client better. It's, if anything, we use the labs to guide diet and lifestyle protocols. Mm-hmm. So in one sense, we're going to be giving our clients a dress protocol, no matter what. But if anything, some of these ranges being just, if you're looking at it from that top-down, broad perspective viewpoint, which you just suggested, then you're just using some of these values to point out that the client's metabolism is wonky and that things are off, and that that is a clue from their body that they need to change some things in their diet and lifestyle, right?
Yes.
So you're so right. We don't need to always get so lost in the weeds with individual values and markers. If anything, they're just check engine lights or wake-up calls. Right?
Yes.
Of course, there are specific things we can do within someone's protocol to, help move things, nudge things this way or that way. But in the long term, we're looking at a way to create sustainable strategies for maintaining someone's health. And if you're just giving someone some hormone replacement, bioidenticals or, certain nutrients or minerals or so forth, that's not necessarily going to help them in the long term over years and years to maintain that, unless it really gets through to the client the importance and and how essential it is to make those changes in terms of their diet and rest and stress reduction, exercise, and all those good foundations need to be in place. And hopefully that way we can get the client to stay well far beyond their working with us, right? That's hopefully exactly. The goal is that we hopefully we're the last people that our clients have to see.
Right.
That's the ideal, at least, right?
Yes. And it's kind of the narrative that you create with this lab work too. So all the different clues you pull together and how you communicate that, that's a really fun part of this. I'll give going back to how to look at lab results and connecting things, I'll give a real-world example here that might be helpful. So actually I talked with my personal client this morning and looking at some lab work and how he was feeling and kind of a check-in there. And a few things he mentioned, he said, I just been a lot of brain fog, not very motivated, feel like distracted and kind of tired sometimes and just can't seem to get things moving forward any consistent amount. I'm listening to that, and then he said, I've noticed also, if I ever have to hold my waist, not be able to go to the bathroom, number one. Number two, I feel really, really bad, and then as soon as I'm able to use the restroom, one way or the other, I just feel this immediate relief. I feel so much better. And I'm thinking about this, I'm like, okay, it sounds like, detoxification is an issue, because he mentioned that when he'll sometimes have a drink of alcohol at nighttime, he usually won't feel all that great the next day. Not hungover necessarily, just not having a lot of motivation. Just doesn't really want to do anything that day. Just tough to get through the day or to actually get something moving and kind of spinning your wheels a little bit, not really getting anywhere. So I'm hearing all these clues here, and he mentioned, I said, even as a kid, it was because I started to mention I think there could be some detoxification pathway issues here. And he said, even as a kid, if I was given Tylenol or some kind of pain medication for a headache, my mom would give that to me, I'd almost hallucinate. I'm like, well, okay, man, anything that you put in this guy's system, he just can't seem to process. I'm thinking about detoxification pathways. So hearing what he's saying there, and then I started looking at lab results. I'm saying, okay, pyroglutamate, very high on Dutch test, not methylating all that great. Estrogen doesn't look that tremendous. We've got beta-glucuronidase there on the GI map. It's not looking stellar. Also on the higher side there, had an HTMA for him, and then tons of metals being detoxed right now and dumped in his system. And I look at all these things together, and I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the individual ranges, and okay, got a lot of things telling me here that we've got detoxification issues, either upstream or the actual detoxification mechanism, very weak in this person, maybe has been for a long time. So I'm putting all these things together, and then I'm thinking about protocol, I'm thinking about everything else going on. And so, one of the big takeaways from the session is that we've got detoxification impairment. We're talking about mold a little bit too, so all these different things that could be pointing to why he's feeling the way that he is, and I was able to back that up with lab testing, which makes me feel better, makes him feel better too, all that clinical correlation. All that happened within a matter of, 5 or 10 minute conversation. You're seeing this in his case, some of the hormones look good. There are other strengths with this person, but so many of these different areas here point toward that we need to really work on supporting detoxification. And I think that's going to make a big shift, and probably very quickly. Once you start to support those pathways properly, some of that brain fog, that fatigue, some of those things can lift very quickly and very dramatically. So that's sort of that process there, right? You're taking the person, what they're saying, their symptoms, even their history. We're looking back, 20, 30, 40 years, and we're looking at lab results. I'm looking at the tight range, but also I zoomed out and said, look at all these kind of things I look at to evaluate detoxification. All these seem off. Well, pathway's clear. Think I was right, Ryan, or do you have an opinion or something to add to that? Think I'm on the right path?
No. Spot on. Yeah, you really brought it all together in terms of looking at the client's history and their unique set of diet and lifestyle behaviors, and how that can potentially result in the clues you're seeing in front of you on their lab work. It's such a big part of it is asking the question, how did we get here? Right? Why is this happening to this particular person? And, kind of turning back the clock a little bit on their metabolism, helping them bring themselves back to a state of balance and homeostasis and optimal function.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, we've got 25 minutes left in the call today, so you guys want to jump on and ask a question, that'd be great. I've actually got a question that's kind of popped in my head, Ryan. I got for you, since you have a lot more expertise in mold than I do. So I was going to ask you if you maybe, I'm putting you on the spot here, maybe you don't know, but the Immunolytics company, they were a sponsor last year for the FDN conference. I assume they will be this year. But the little mold Petri dishes that they use for some of the mold testing. So do you have any experience with that? Are those worth the time to put those things out?
I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I have run those mold plates from Immunolytics. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. And as an experiment, I ran those tests alongside an ERMI test. And the ERMI is from EnviroBiomics, is the lab company that runs that test. And ERMI is an acronym. It stands for Environmental Relative Moldiness Index. So it's actually looking at when it's assessing the mold spores in your home, it's actually giving you a score. Your test result gives you an ERMI score, and it's weighing that score against a national average relative to how moldy your home might be compared to the average home across the United States. So the ERMI test, and I'll get back to the Immunolytics test in just a moment. The ERMI test, in my opinion, would be the gold standard for mold testing. It uses DNA PCR testing, which is the same technology that the GI map uses. And then it looks at, it's either 32 or 36 different mold species that might potentially show up, and it's measuring those in spore equivalents per milligram. So, Brandon, we had talked a little bit about this, but years ago I lived in a very moldy home in North Georgia, very humid climate, but it was also an older home with a history of water damage and moisture and humidity. And running an ERMI test, the mold score in our home was actually twice above the reference range. So it was twice above that. So it was a pretty moldy situation we were living in, and was making us quite sick for a number of years before we figured out what was going on. So I had also run the Immunolytics test that same year. It wasn't the same month, but nothing had changed in terms of remediating the house. So even if they were months apart, they would have given us a similar picture. And the Immunolytics test was also showed that mold was through the roof in the house. And to describe the testing methodology there, you're actually leaving out these little mold plates. They're like little plastic Petri dishes, actually. And you can leave one in each room in the house. You could even leave one in your attic. You can leave one in your crawl space. You can even leave one in your car to see if your car might have a mold issue, right? Like say you left the window open, for example, and you have cloth seats and they got really wet and damp, that could potentially cause a mold issue. So when you mail those plates off to the lab and you leave the Petri dishes in each room for, I think it's 15 to 20 minutes, you send them off to the lab, and then rather than using DNA testing like the ERMI test does, these Petri dishes at Immunolytics, they actually culture them, almost like the old school, BioHealth 401H, right? So they would use culturing and they see what they can grow in there, based on whatever microscopic spores have collected from the air on those Petri dishes that you collected in the home. What's kind of neat, too, about that test is that they send you images of what they've cultured. And if I could show you these pictures, they were nasty. They just had grown all kinds of just large swaths of different kinds of like fuzzy-looking creatures and black molds, and it looks pretty disgusting. But also drove the point home that I was breathing this stuff in on a day-to-day basis. It was colonizing my gut, and in the form of yeast and mold and fungal overgrowth, and was also what was causing my chronic allergies, asthma, and sinus congestion. So, I have reason to believe that the majority of chronic sinus congestion and sinusitis is probably 90% or even 95% fungal related, and typically a result of mold exposure environmentally in the home. So the advantages of the Immunolytics test is that it is a bit more affordable than the ERMI test. So you can actually just buy a kit of several of these Petri dishes. I think, in sets of 4 or 6 or 12, depending on how many you need. You could buy just single a la carte Petri dishes. So if you just wanted to run one of them, which is super cost effective. I don't think running just one mold plate, I don't think would be more than maybe $30 or $40, including shipping. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's around that range. Whereas the ERMI test, including shipping, is about $260. So cost difference there for sure. Immunolytics is a great starting place if you're on a budget. Both will give you, a pretty good picture of what's going on. And, especially if you've had a history of water damage in the house, and if you're correlating that with, sinus issues, chronic fatigue, migraines, you'll tend to see. I can elaborate just a little bit on that in terms of what you might see symptom-wise with a client that might come to you. You might occasionally get these clients. They don't just have 1 or 2 or 3 symptoms. They have like a dozen or more symptoms, and they're all chronic, and you kind of don't know where to start. And that in itself is a red flag for a mold issue. When someone has this laundry list of symptoms that are really exhaustive, even Dr. Richie Shoemaker, who many consider to be the grandfather of mold illness, he had characterized mold illness as a multi-symptom, multi-system illness. In other words, he had noticed that in his patient set that were dealing with sick building syndrome or mold illness, they tended to have more than just a few symptoms. And he actually developed this cluster analysis where you can look at symptoms in different categories, and he noticed that most of his mold illness patients had symptoms in a minimum of 6 or 7 different categories. Just and even weird stuff like you'll see with mold illness, or being on that spectrum of being affected by mold, you'll see things like clients waking up in the middle of the night to pee several times. Believe it or not, that is a sign of a mold issue, or static shock, or vertigo, poor visual contrast. Like if you have trouble driving at night, mold toxins could even affect your vision. So that's a bit of insight into the mold world. Hope that helps to, kind of distinguish some of the testing options out there.
Thank you. That's just what I was looking at. I had my test kit. I got one at the conference last year with the Petri dishes, and I hadn't used it. And I was like, how do I use this thing? So my Petri dishes were expired by a few months, so I don't know if it'll be the greatest test. I'm going to go ahead and get another kit just in case, but put them out at the beginning of the week. I think it's an hour is what they say. I think that's what it was, like for an hour. And I put it in, and you close them up, label them, and you put them in this foil bag, and you put it in the darkness in a warm environment for I think 10 days. They say check it, I think 7 days. I've got to look and see. Anyhow, today was my first day to get the tests and check it just to see what's going on there. And again, Petri dishes are expired, so I'm kind of wondering about the results. We'll actually do it for a real another time. But looking at that, I only had just a couple popping up, which within their limits there, I think it's like anywhere from 4 or less colonies showing up on the Petri dish. That's within a okay range for the average, I think, person there. And then there's a couple ranges up from that. So I think we're looking good in our house, but I'm going to just do another test just to make sure, just in case. It's like I had those, I just hadn't used them. So I thought it was pretty cool to actually see something growing this morning on those dishes.
Wow. That's fascinating. Thanks for clarifying, too, that it was an hour. I think I had said 20 minutes, but I was wrong about that. It was.
They may have changed it.
Maybe. Yeah. It
may have changed
about
it since you did it.
Sure. It was about maybe 4 years ago that I ran those. And another little tip, too, is I know some people will even run one of the mold plates and leave one outdoors. And that's because mold and fungal spores they're everywhere. They're ubiquitous in the environment, even outdoors. So if you run one outside of your home, that can give you essentially like a control sample so that you can compare the indoor air versus the outdoor air. So that's a helpful little tip or trick there. And, another reason that's done is because, not all mold and fungi and yeast are created equal, right? Some are more toxic or pathogenic. Some can produce toxins might cause a lot of inflammation in our body, whereas some don't produce mycotoxins and aren't necessarily correlated with dysfunction. So, mold and fungi, we've evolved with them over hundreds of thousands of years, and we do. Just like with Candida, right? All of us have some degree of Candida. It's when it becomes overgrown or overrepresented that it can become a problem. So, we don't always want to have a mindset of going to war with the microbes. It's all about balance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we got to think a little less binarily. It's not good or bad. There's some gray area there, and you got to put it all together with what you know. So. Yeah, thanks for that rundown. That's great. Again, we talk about many times we brought up on this call is that, and like Ryan was saying, go for the easy stuff first, the more obvious things. I don't do mold testing necessarily with everybody, or think down that route. It's in the back of my mind. But for one client I'm thinking about, I'm like, okay, I'm seeing some. You're at a different place. Now you come back home and you feel worse when you're home versus when you're on the road or someplace different. Could there be something going on here? There's some symptoms that point that way. We've done a lot of work already. Maybe this is something we need to look at. So I'm thinking down that route. So be aware enough, the list that Ryan gave there of what you might feel if there is a mold issue for your client or yourself, have that list written down or just in your head and say, okay, could there be something going on here with that person? And you might want to go down that route. I wouldn't go down that route alone because you've got to have everything else functioning well to overcome something like mold. And Ryan, am I wrong in saying that with mold, there's mold everywhere, and we'll probably have some exposure, but depending on the person's health level and their constitution, could they be okay with some mold being in their system or a higher level than another person? Could some people not actually have any negative effects from mold, even at a high level? Is that possible?
If it's at a very high level, I would tend to think it would affect most people, unless you have a strong constitution and a healthy immune system, right? So, I think what you're getting at there is, the health of the host makes a big difference, right? And, there was a concept that Dr. Richie Shoemaker had introduced, which was, this gets a little more advanced, but he was looking at running genetic testing on his patient set, and he found that about 24% to be exact, that 24% of the population may have a particular HLA gene, like a genetic mutation, like when we talk about, say, like MTHFR, for example, that there is an HLA gene which may make that subset of the population more sensitive to mold and to mold toxins. So there may be a genetic component in the sense that, you do see people that can live in moldy environments and never seem to get sick. And then you have some people that walk into a used bookstore, and, if you've ever been to a used bookstore and you smell that musty smell, that's mold, right? And that's something until I healed from my own mold issues that it was just off the table for me. I just could not even walk in to a used bookstore even for a minute or two. So I think there is a spectrum of some people being perhaps a lot more sensitive, maybe for genetic reasons, maybe for immune reasons, that they've got, say, low secretory IgA could be a factor. And then you see people, seem to kind of just whiz through life and be able to eat whatever they want. And, not to say that that the clock isn't ticking metabolically speaking for them, right? I always think it's just a matter of time for some people. And if you pull on that chain hard enough, everyone has a weak link somewhere, right? So that can account for some of our biological differences, and why some of us may get sick at a much younger age, and for some people it takes a little bit longer for that to happen.
It's true. Just if you live enough life, you can observe that, right?
Yep.
So,
yep.
Very good. Yeah, good analogy there. Well, cool. Well, that was my question, so thanks for answering my question, right?
Yeah, sure.
I'll give you guys a report on my Petri dishes here. So especially if I run some, I'm probably going to order some more here and we're doing another test here and see. I might put in some different places like you're talking about. Maybe we'll get a control going there, and we'll put a few more. I'll get a bunch of them, and then I'll let you guys know what we find. So I'm in Kentucky, which we get a lot of humidity for sure. I don't feel like we have a mold issue, but hey, let's test and not guess, right? That's our motto.
Yeah, sometimes mold isn't. You don't always see it. Often with mold, we think of black mold. We think of it being very visible, like in the bathroom in a very moist area. But mold can also be invisible, and it often doesn't always have a scent either, depending on because there's many dozens of different species. So that's something to be aware of too. Another thing I'll add too quickly is that when I had gotten those Petri dish results back from Immunolytics, there were a handful of species that read on the test, it said TNTC, which is an abbreviation for too numerous to count, meaning that the mold spores the counts were so high that they couldn't even count it or calibrate for it. So that was my experience, and just glad we figured it out, and we eventually did a whole bunch of remediation to the house, and did cost quite a bit of money, and then eventually relocated here to Denver, where I tend to do much better with the drier air that has much lower relative humidity.
Good stuff. Well, thanks again. So, all right. Well, let's see. We got 6 minutes left. So, guys, this is the last call for questions because we don't give short answers on this show. That's for sure. So, if you have a question you want us to ask, just hit one on the keypad there. And see a lot of you guys tuned in. I love it. Thanks for spending an hour with us on your Friday. Hopefully, launching into the weekend, encouraged and inspired, and maybe a little more direction on things. So, last call for questions, and I'm going to take a written-in question here. See if I can find a good one here I wanted to bring up. Here's one I think we could probably cover relatively quickly. Ryan, maybe you take some of this here. In Module 2, Reed briefly mentions cortisol shunting to cortisone. He said he was going to go over it with more in the results section, I think I may have missed it. There's so much great information. Just looking for some direction here on cortisol to cortisone. So, Ron, you want to maybe give a brief rundown of what we're talking about there?
I think I know a little bit about that. So cortisol would be the biologically active form of the hormone, whereas cortisone is the inert or biologically inactive hormone. So if I remember correctly, I think this is right, that cortisol and cortisone can intraconvert. And that's kind of just a fancy word for they can kind of mutate into each other depending upon what the body's needs are, either in the moment or, in different parts of the body. Cortisol can convert to cortisone, and then cortisone can convert back to cortisol. I'm pretty certain that conversion happens in the kidneys, by the way. So that's just a neat little fact. And so, on a Dutch test, for example, if you see someone, there's actually an index that shows what the body's preference is in terms of those urine metabolites of either cortisol versus cortisone. So it's like a gas gauge reading style index. And if you see someone producing more cortisol, the body's probably preferring that in order to deal with some kind of inflammation, right? If you see a client preferring cortisone metabolites, what that means is their cortisol is getting inactivated. And that could happen for a number of reasons. One might be cortisol resistance, right? If you've been pushing the pedal to the metal for years and years and flooding your body with cortisol, it might start to inactivate that cortisol to cortisone to protect your body from the catabolic effects of all that cortisol. Right? So your body might almost kind of start inactivating that cortisol as a protective mechanism to help protect again the destructive effects that cortisol might have. And that's primarily the difference between the two. Is one is the active form and one is the inactive form.
Awesome. And then if you want to take this and Reed's here talking about probably on this thing, he covers it with the Dutch training that we have, but also with the saliva test there. So sometimes you can have a person that has very low cortisol on their test, and it really has. It's not their adrenal glands that are not responding and producing enough cortisol. It could be shunted over to cortisone. So you don't get that. You don't get that visibility on stress and hormone panel, unfortunately, but you might be able to infer based on everything else you know from that person what's going on there. So a low cortisol could truly mean low cortisol, or it could be a shunting over to cortisone. So you can have both those scenarios going on, or different variations of that. So something to be aware of, because it might dictate what you do for that person as far as the supplement protocol or different recommendations you're going to make for your dress protocol.
If a client had low cortisol and low cortisone on top of that, that might be kind of a double whammy scenario, because they already have low cortisol to begin with, and what little cortisol they have, their body's inactivating it to cortisone. So that person is probably likely to feel pretty lousy in terms of, if I were to guess, like looking at a test result like that, I would probably assume, if I didn't know much about their history or how they felt or what their main complaints were, that they probably were pretty chronically fatigued and brain fogged and had blood sugar dysregulation issues, maybe were stressed out for many years. That's probably what I would expect to see with a pattern like that. Just because we do know that cortisol can make us feel good and has anti-inflammatory properties. So if someone doesn't have enough cortisol, and it's also inactivating the cortisone, then they don't have enough cortisol in the active form to put up the good fight, right? So anything that would come along in that case to drive inflammation from a vital reserve perspective, from a hormonal perspective, they wouldn't really be able to really respond all that appropriately in terms of the anti-inflammatory properties of cortisol. Again, I think that person is pretty apt to. I wouldn't not be surprised if they felt pretty awfully lousy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. All right. Well, it's giving me the warning. We're running out of time really quickly. So, guys, thanks for tuning in today and for the questions that were written in. And, of course, our graduates, Christina, Sherry, and Dave. Great job, guys. And Brian, again, thanks for being on with me, providing some excellent answers, helping me out on the call, too. So we're all learning from each other. And guys, have a great weekend. And, we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.